And now to the presentation that we've got here. We have Alex Klein, who's the director of the European Cantors Association. Probably needs little introduction to our regulars, although I'll invite him when he starts to say more about himself if he wishes. And David Prager, often called Dr. Prager, incorrectly because actually his email is Dr. Prager. Nevertheless, he's accompanied me today, even though he's not a doctor, but he is a chemist. Thank you very much. We've opened the window, and I'm aware that one of the problems with opening the window is Deutsche Bahn railways, but we'll do the best for it. So David is an acknowledged expert in Nusa, in music and other similar things. He's a prolific contributor to a number of groups, including the London Chazzanut group, which I'm on, also a number of Facebook groups. Delighted to have both he and Alex here today about the remarkable Eric Smith archive of our cantorial treasures.
Thank you very much. Alex is going to kick off.
Well, I'm going to introduce why archives are so important, and why when you, instead of throwing things out because somebody's doing a house clearance, and because you don't know what it is, you get a box of records, a box of this, a box of that, and you just chuck it or throw it in the bin. Many things of great importance have been lost by just people throwing it out, or the inheritance, a parent or a grandparent's house, doing a house clearance, and then throwing things in the garbage or in the bin. Prime example, last year I had a phone call from cousin Fagan Bloom's grandson. He said, my father, who's nearly 90, which is the son of cousin Fagan Bloom, who emigrated to Israel, and supposedly took his whole collection of music, which was astounding, handwritten manuscripts, music, recording and everything, to Israel, and it ended up in various different places, universities, etc. So he says, I've got 3 boxes of material, I don't know what to do with them. So I'm 200 miles away in Manchester. I thought, what's better to do? David understands the music, and he's my schlier. So I said to David, will you do me a favour, make an appointment, and go and have a look at these boxes of archive material. There's music, there was recordings, there was tapes, there's all sorts of things. And the only person I could rely on to do this with knowledge is my dear friend David, who's a brilliant archivist. You want to know anything about anything, David is your guide. And again, with the Jollis Encyclopedia, I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but it's available on our website, on the ECA website. It's in a PDF format, it's free of charge to download it, and it tells you every single synagogue that has ever been in the UK. And so from Scotland to Wales, from the time of Cromwell to the present day, and if there's information there that people have, relatives or friends that has information that we can add that is not in the Jollis Encyclopedia, we will add it. We have hard copy of the original, which took 10 years to produce by Dr. Michael Jollis, and then again, as we're talking about archives, and then we're continuing adding and adding and adding. So it's phenomenal. So some people might have relatives that might have been in Wales, or might have been in Cornwall, or might have been in Scotland, and they look up a shawl that some long lost family member had been there, and they said, oh look, I know where he was, and he was my great uncle's auntie's brother or sister, whatever it is. and you can find out information that maybe you never had, or if the information that you know might be slightly wrong or needs correcting, let us know and we can correct these things. It's very, very important to be authentic with all the information you have. Getting back to this archive, so David had a look at it, and we found amongst the archives recordings from the Sirena label, Joshua Rosenblatt, and recording of that hill. And these were not even catalogued, because the Sirena catalogue was originally destroyed. They weren't in the original catalogue, and we found things that, if we wouldn't have found them, didn't exist, or we didn't know they existed. We also found, through those recordings, who actually composed some of the songs that we've got on traditional or Masorti or whatever it is, because we didn't know who composed them. So it answered the very different questions. Then we have posters, then we have private recordings, and so on and so forth. And the music, which was handwritten and notated by Chazzanut, unbelievable. He literally was a Bible of information by handwriting music and music and music. His wife never saw him because he spent all his time just writing. So we found so many interesting things. Eventually, we spoke to people that we know. We spoke to Israel National Library and Dr. Amalia Kedem, who was in charge of some of the archives there. She agreed to take them, and we put them onto a container, and we sent them the music and the manuscripts off to there. And we have a great friend who can actually transcribe and re-record digitally. So we sent the actual recordings that we had to somebody in New York who's representing them and making them into a beautiful collection. So eventually that will be shared. So what we want to do is share the things that we have. What's the point of keeping them and then pushing them away and nobody knows that they're there? A lot of people who have archives or recording think they're worth a fortune, so they don't want to share and they don't want to reproduce. But my idea and David's idea is, if you've got something that is absolutely beautiful, we have to share it with people. It gives them something new, something to get their head round, to learn, and we can continue that way the traditions that might go back centuries and centuries and centuries. So if you do have anything, or you do find something in a clearance, let us know, because we know what to do with them. And we will cherish what we need and what hasn't been seen before. And it will go to the right place so everybody can enjoy that. So that's the most important thing. Don't dump it until you know what it is. It might, if it's not worth anything, there's hundreds and hundreds of copies, like the university in Florida, which got shelves and shelves and shelves of LPs, repeat in different guises, but they've also got reel-to-reel tapes and tapes and tapes, which they haven't, and recordings, they haven't got the time to actually re-record and reproduce, because everything has to be done in the real time. If it's a half an hour recording, you can't do it in 5 minutes like digitally, you can do from transfer to transfer. So it's got to be the process of actually recording. Let's say you have a 78. You've got to clean the 78. You have to record it, you wet it, and you have put the stylus. But once you've done that, the record is useless, you can't play it again. But you'll get a tremendous recording. So it's better to do that than have it, just sitting around doing it. But people need volunteers. The unfortunate thing is people need volunteers, and they need volunteers who actually know what they're looking for or know what they're doing, because you have to have the right speed. Not every 78 is a 78. It could be a 70, it could be an 86, it could be a 90. So it makes a difference to the pitch and to what the voice sounds like. To the, by playing it at the right speed, it's the most important thing. So unless you actually know what the Cantors should sound like, or the musicians should sound like, there are recordings out there which have, changed the voice of somebody, and they don't sound like they should do. So thank you for listening, and I will hand over to my colleague, ripped off it.
Okay, thank you very much. Who is Eric Smith? So the answer is, he's an 88-year-old pharmacist from Manchester who was the chairman of the Manchester Jewish Male Voice Choir many years ago, and he's just gone on Aliyah to Netanya. He always had an apartment in Netanya, but now he's downsizing in England and upsizing in Israel. And via Russell and Alex's recent series of joint ventures with the Cantors Assembly of Zoom meetings, Eric Smith thought ECA is the right place, and maybe I'll ring David Prager to say, what shall I do with my boxes of stuff? And what are his boxes of stuff? So here are some examples of what his boxes of stuff might be. So the Manchester Jewish Male Choir rejoiced in a librarian called Phil Sakaloff, whose signature is in the bottom right-hand corner of Ms. Moshe Chanukas Abayas there. And he reproduced all the choir's music on these beautiful sheets in the 1960s. I briefly, actually, when I was 17 or 18, was in that choir, and I knew these gentlemen, and I received many copies of music looking like that, which was really beautiful. And by the way, this is Zedel Rovner's Moshe Chanukas Abayas, and Alex mentioned that a number of choirs have sung this Ms. Moshe didn't know, because the old director of the Manchester Male Voice Choir, called Fabian Gonski, who didn't get to put names of composers very often on the tops of the music.
Just put arranged ones.
Anyway, so one sort of archive was music, and the music has gone to Alex in a big pile, and Alex is getting it digitized
in California.
So it will be available. Next, there were some photographs and some press cuttings. They've gone in a box into the Manchester Jewish Museum. Then, Eric, with his Sirena Polish records from the 1930s, was on holiday on a tour of South Africa, and he visited Durban, and he met Reverend Perkes in Durban, who said, I'm 80, my children are not interested in my record collection, you seem to be a good chap, would you like to acquire them? And Eric said yes, and so the box of 50 extremely rare records was loaded onto the coach of this trip in South Africa. Eric told me very proudly he didn't have to pay any excess weight at the airport because he was with a group and they just shoved the box first of all in the bottom of the coach, and then it was loaded up in his luggage on the plane, and it arrived in Manchester with only one of the 50 records broken and 49 intact. So that we'll hear something of those records in a minute. And on the bottom right-hand corner is a pocket badge sewable onto your blazer if you are a member of the Manchester Jewish Male Voice Choir. And Alex and I spent a very happy morning a month ago in Manchester in the Jewish Museum looking through what was in the box of stuff that he gave to the museum. That pocket badge was there, and you will see it being worn in a video which will be shown at the end of this presentation. In terms of digitizing the records, Eric's son, I said to Eric, can you still play these things? You've got a 78 player. He said yes. And together with his son, he recorded all 100 sides of the old 78s himself. And our friend Akiva Mittelman, the Chassid in New York, who's an electronics expert, he actually acquired the originals of the records from Eric as the next generation of people who is interested. And so hopefully Ad Meir Esrim Shona that Akiva should have them in New York in good health. And besides this stuff were, as Alex also mentioned, some old reel-to-reel tapes from the 1960s of concerts which happened in Manchester, at which the choir sang when various distinguished visiting cantors hit upon Manchester to concertise.
And it's incredible. We had this Cantorian route around the world, and that's how we met Daniel Schwartz, from this online group, and then Akiva Mitchell and some various other people. So we used to correspond with different archives and different music, and that's how we got to get this off the ground. And go.
Yeah, so I'll make an important point. There is an international chevra of people in WhatsApp groups who exchange information, recordings, schmooze, historical information, biographical information, gravestone prints, all sorts of things, which illuminate this world and which keep us informed.
And we've even renovated old graves of the Master Chazzanut.
You'll see that in a second.
As well from different people, because it's not fair that these will go in disarray and there's no families left. So we think, it's befitting some of the great Chazzanut of the past, whether they're going in Poland or in Russia or wherever they are in the world, and the graves have gone to ruin. So through our organisations and through various different channels, we've managed to do the right thing.
And in fact, top right hand corner, Hamchaber Esaner, Musik von Birnbaum, meaning we think Avram Birnbaum, who had the Cantors Schule in Częstochowa at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. He was the chazan in a Nozik shul in Warsaw after Shlomo Hirschman, the brother of Mordechai Hirschman, left in 1930 for Manchester, by the way. And this gentleman was the chazan of a previous venue of the ECA meeting in Budapest. He was the Rombach shul chazan in the 1930s, and he and one other Polish-born cantor, Price, were kicked out by the fascists, which saved their lives just before the war because they didn't have work permits to continue to work in fascist Hungary. And so
David, what was the name? Who's the cousin?
Hermann Bornstein. Peter Schleiport, he's buried in Liverpool, and his English naturalization certificate says he's born in Łódź, and because he was a Polish alien in fascist Hungary, he wasn't welcome after the end of the 1930s, and he managed to get a job in Prince's Road Synagogue in Liverpool.
Not to be confused
with the other Bornsteins from Warsaw. This is a lodger. Bornstein. And his naturalization certificate also spells it the same way, Bornstein. Right, let's move on. Should we go page down on here? Right. So here's some pictures to illuminate the archive. Pictures of some good voices. On top left is young Philip Kopperman, who was the chazan in the Great Synagogue in London in 1950, and in 1965 at my bar mitzvah he was a prober in South Manchester Synagogue, and he was a genius music reader, terrific musician. He was an opera student of Dino Borgioli, he was a Chazzanut student at Jews College of Shlomo Pikasovich, and he was a private student of Shmuel Baruch Tauber, who was in England around 1950. Next below him is Johnny Gluck, who was born in Hungary, but his dad got a job in Dublin, and he was sent to study also in Jews College, but in a slightly later era, in the time of Leo Grill, being a teacher in Jews College underneath him, and he died tragically young in South Africa in his mid-30s, but a beautiful voice. And underneath him is Simon Hass, who was born in Poland, survived the war in Siberia, after the war came to London, and he was Sir Isaac Wolfson's favourite cantor of the Central Synagogue in Great Portland Street, and his midnight Slichot services were called Midnight Hass, as opposed to Midnight Mass. And, top right, visiting Manchester in 1969 and taped by Eric Smith is David Kusovitsky, who I don't need to say anything much more about. Underneath him is Moshe Price, who was the Chazzanut of Kaczynski Street Synagogue in Budapest as a young prodigy, aged 19, already in the early 1930s, getting a job alongside Dan Steif. And I think Daniel will tell us that his father heard him singing in Budapest as a young man.
From 1938 to 1944. My father was a student at the Rabbinical Seminary, and
So,
I heard Price, and he heard Yehuda Mandel in the Rumbach.
so there you go. So Price, I heard when he visited England in the 1960s, and Eric Smith taped him. Amazing voice, life-changing experience almost to hear such a Chazzanut. And he was a Chazzanut in the Central Shul in Manchester during the war, and like Herman Bornstein, he was kicked out of Budapest for being a Polish alien. Again, we say
Like Misha Alexandrovich also was in the Central Shul before he went back to Russia.
So we're hearing here that Manchester actually was the cantorial centre of the world. And Alex Klein lives there, as does Yvonne. Right, what in my hand corner? We've seen him this morning already, a young Moshe Stern. He also visited Manchester and Constantine, and also his voice was captured by Eric Smith. So let's move on. Next one, this one. You're going to hear some music now. Now in 1965, Simon Hass did a charity concert in Manchester, and he came up there with his non-Jewish German accompanist who was brilliant, a fellow called John Gunter. And his daughter told us that there was a bond between these two, a Holocaust survivor from Poland and this German, not young, pianist who turned up in his life in around 1960. And there are a series of records. And in England, a Chazzanut record by a United Synagogue Cantor is a rare phenomenon because, generally speaking, the Chazonim were not allowed to record as part of their employment contract.
Simon Hass's records and the various other Chazonim of the time, they were basically commercial private recordings. The Chazonim never made a penny out of it.
These two went to Lubavitch.
They had to be for a charity, and they had to work within the United Synagogue for 7 days. They could not record, they couldn't charge for weddings, they couldn't charge for all the extras that Chazonim charge today around the world. And I think it's still basically still applicable within that. There are never any chuppahs or something recorded, because when you sit in, with a cine camera or a video camera, you went into United Synagogue and wanted to record a chuppah, you weren't allowed to. The videoist couldn't record it. So unfortunately, unless somebody's done it privately, we have no recordings of some of these great chazonim perform a chuppah. But these chuppahs were absolutely magnificent, traditional, what we call a German-Polish tradition, with the Koromato and the Sheva Brachot and everything that we were used to week in and week out during the 1950s and 1960s and the early 1970s in the UK. But if there is archives or anything, this is why it's important. Anybody who has this or knows anybody who has these type of recordings, this is, to us, gold dust, and it's extremely important, because the future generation will never know what these great chazonim sounded like and how beautiful the chuppah was within the United Synagogue. Because it was literally week in and week out, week in and week out. Simon Hass would do a chuppah at 12 o'clock, we'll do another one at 2 o'clock, we'll do another one at 4 o'clock, and so on and so forth. Members of the shul, and even those that were not members, had to book 12 months or 2 years in advance to have Simon Hass and his choir do their child or their grandchild's chuppah. It was so, and as David mentioned earlier, even though the midnight slichas that we had, this was again something that was started by, basically, was Hass. And if you went to the Great Portland Street Shul for midnight slichas, you had to arrive there basically an hour before slichas started, otherwise you couldn't get a seat, and the shul was literally packed. And that's how early it had to be. It's like going to the football.
Okay, and now we're going to hear it. Right, I just wanted to say this picture that he posed for is the best regal cantorial picture in the world, I think. Anyway, there you go, he's got a proper bib on, he's got a proper bobble hat on, he's got a flourishing whole image there with a big talus wrapped around it. And I remember as a boy, coming to my first cantorial concert, I was very disappointed that the pictures in the advert were not like the bloke who walked on the stage with a snap. That's not a proper cast, he can't sing with it. Digitised tape from our friend in New York set back to us to here. And I was a 13 or something year old boy in that audience. And it's wonderful to hear again. Right, next slide.
You know, in his own apartment, which was a huge apartment, there's only 2 apartments above the synagogue, he had his own recording studio. So he recorded his own records at home within the studio.
We've got 10 minutes left, so we've got to Copperman now. Right. So here's Philip Copperman, who I mentioned before. He's seen Cosina Sleep, which we heard so beautifully from Daniel last night, in 1967 in Manchester. And it's the only known copy in the world of Cousin Copperman singing this beautiful, influence, tenor voice. I think again we'll give it the beginning and the end to give you an impression. Daphne Lewis on the piano. She became Colin. Johnny Gluck. So the Opera House in Manchester in 1969, and he sang with David Kusowitsky, also didn't allow recordings, but the rehearsal was recorded by the good Eric Smith. And here is Rosenblatt's Show Me Israel with the arrangement by Joseph Rambam of Israel to make it a choral piece. And it's the only known copy in the world also of Johnny Gluck singing Show Me Israel.
It's Sfira Sawanga, very nice.
Rambam.
Sfira Sawanga, yeah, very nice.
Yes.
Oder die Schmiede.
By the way, for the grammarians here, English, Hamshalat Shib B'Shilish Kedusha LeKodesh, whereas on the Rosenblatt record, Sholosh Kedushas LeKodesh, and it's because the English rabbinate was anxious to copy the, I think Yaakov Emden, the Paskin, you shouldn't speak about Holy Trinity in the davening, so you should make it a singular Shilish Kedusha, not Sholosh Kedushas. Anyway, right, we're going on away from Johnny Gluck. Okie dokie. The Cyrena record company was totally destroyed by the Nazis. It was a Jewish company in Warsaw. It was a leading technology and arts company making a lot of records. Here you see some pictures on the right and the left-hand side of items from the Eric Smith collection of Polish records. A lot of them are Cyrenas, a few of them are the Leonoras, but the Cyrena record catalogue has been manually reconstructed after the war by a Polish gentleman and published for a very expensive price, and there is one copy in the British Library in King's Cross, and I went to have a look at it and photographed the cover, and there you go. So now you can see what the Cyrena Schoira looked like. Here is the grave of Reverend Perkins in Durban, the gentleman who made over to Eric Smith his collection of 50 records of the likes of Mann, Kusowitsky, Bornstein, Soroka, etc., etc. And there's the grave of the good Reverend Perkins. And amazingly, a lot of these records are missing from the main library collections of the world. So here's a very sad record. This is Tuna Ramanov, Abram Davidovich, who was a conductor in Warsaw before the war, was murdered in the Holocaust. Most of the boys in the choir were murdered in the Holocaust. Herman Bornstein, as we mentioned earlier, got to Liverpool, and he died in 1967. Our friend, who isn't here and sends us all greetings, Yehuda Marks, the Chazzanut of the Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester, visited the grave in Liverpool recently. He gave us a ring and he said, "The grave of Bornstein is in a terrible condition. Do you think we could do something about it?" So I organised the finances to turn it into this, and recently I received that picture. Chessel Emes for Herman Bornstein, whose voice we will hear now singing the Chuna Raman. Singing Zabel Zilbert's Havdalah, soloist Cantor Benjamin Muller. And this is a fantastic recording. So, there you go. So this is going to play us out.
Thank you.
want to repeat what Alex said right at the start, which is if you've got an old grandfather who passes away and he's got a collection of old 78s, or in fact manuscripts, or anything that looks cantorial, please make sure that it gets to a good home, because otherwise these things are completely lost. These things are completely lost. So we've got a couple of questions. We actually have we've got time for just a couple of questions. We'll take
from Durban.
We'll take Durban first.
I must say, not only do I know Eric Smith, as I met him at his Sundance Sukkah when I lived in Leeds, but I'm probably the only one who still remembers Reverend Perkins personally. I sang in his choir as a young boy. So he was the cousin, and I was in the Durban United Teachers Congregation choir. So he was an incredible man. I just WhatsApped you a photograph of Reverend Perkins in 1948 as second reader at the Oxford Synagogue. So he was still a young reverend then.
Actually, there's also a connection in that photo. He's the second cantor to Chazan Lichterman.
Yes, that's the
who
second.
was the Chazan in the Nozick Shul immediately before the Holocaust.
So it's incredible how
Amazing.
that links different continents and generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You mentioned that you have this is available to the wider audience. Where is it located?
Sorry, say that again.
So where can you see the Eric Smith archive?
Where can you
right, so I said to
where-
Eric, I think we should send all these records to be available freely online. So the whole 100 sides of digitized Cyrena and Lenora early records of Mandel, Kusevitsky, Pontin are all free online now on the Dartmouth Jewish
on the
on the Dartmouth Jewish DJ essay with pictures of the labels and so right. If you want the tapes, they are so far just on a Dropbox file which can be made available.
Yeah.
If you want photos of the memorabilia,
We can put them on the ECA maybe.
this will be online
Yeah.
immediately following the show, won't it?
Well, maybe not immediately following that.